Hi everyone, you're listening to Bookworms, being broadcast to you today on Arrow 92.7 FM, your community access radio channel, and Wairarapa TV on Freeview Channel 41. This program is broadcast live every other Tuesday at 3 p.m. and repeated on the Tuesdays in between at 3 p.m. My name is Steve Lilliston, and with me today is Alan
Wild.
Hi Alan, how are you doing?
Good, thanks, Steve.
Great, thanks for coming.
Pleasure to be here, mate.
Now, over the course of the next 30 minutes, we'll read you a few of our favourite literary treasures, or whatever, which we hope you'll find interesting. So, let's get started. So we've got a couple of things today. I'll be reading something from Harold Pinter, and Alan afterwards will be doing something completely different. Nothing like Pinter, so that should hopefully be interesting
Wairarapa
for you. What is it, Alan?
Wairarapa Moana.
Wairarapa Moana.
Wairarapa
Excellent.
Lake.
Yeah. So anyway, let's trot on and go through. I've written a few things down about Harold Pinter because I can't remember it all. Basically, he was born in 1930 in England, London, and died in 2008. An English playwright who achieved international renown as one of the most complex and challenging post-World War II dramatists. His plays are noted for their use of understatement, small talk, reticence, and even silence to convey the substance of a character's thought, which often lies several layers beneath and contradicts his speech. In 2005, he won the Nobel Prize for Literature. So he's a no-mean dramatist.
Pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good. He's pretty good. Not as good as Shakespeare, but still pretty good. Pinter's plays are ambivalent in their plots, presentation of characters and endings, but they are works of undeniable power and originality. Today I'll be reading an excerpt from The Dumb Waiter, first produced in 1959, that's 60 years ago, for those of you that are not mathematically inclined. This is a one-act drama that established the mood of comic menace that was to figure largely in his later works. And I think that is the big thing with Pinter, is the menace that he has underlying everything, which is really intriguing. Dialogue is of central importance in Pinter's plays and is perhaps the key to his originality. His character's colloquial, Pinteresque speech consists of disjointed and oddly ambivalent conversation that is punctuated by resonant silences. The character's speech, hesitations and pauses reveal not only their own alienation, but the difficulties they have in communicating, and also the many layers of meaning that can be contained in even the most innocuous statements. Pinter also wrote for radio and TV, as well as a number of very successful motion pictures, some of which are The French Lieutenant's Woman, back in 1981, you may remember, The Handmaid's Tale in 1990, and Sleuth in 2007. So that's the guy in a nutshell. Fascinating character, and his works are absolutely fascinating. This is The Dumb Waiter. I'll just read a little bit to set the scene for The Dumb Waiter. There are two guys in it, Ben and Gus. The setting is a basement room. There are two beds there, flat against the back wall, and a serving hatch which is closed between the beds. A door to the kitchen and lavatory left, and a door to the passage right. Ben is lying on a bed left, reading a newspaper. Gus is sitting on a bed, tying his shoelaces with difficulty. Both are dressed in shirts, trousers and braces. Silence. Pinter's big on silence. Silence. Gus ties his laces, rises, yawns, and begins to walk slowly to the door. He stops, looks down, and shakes his foot. Ben lowers his paper and watches him. Gus kneels and unties his shoelace and slowly takes off the shoe. He looks inside it and brings out a flattened matchbox. He shakes it and examines it. Their eyes meet. Ben rattles his paper and reads. Gus puts the matchbox in his pocket and bends down to put on his shoe. He ties his lace with difficulty. Ben lowers his paper and watches him. Gus walks to the door, stops, shakes the other foot. He kneels, unties the shoelace, and slowly takes off the shoe. He looks inside and brings out a flattened cigarette packet. He shakes it and examines it. Their eyes meet. Ben rattles his paper and reads. Gus puts the packet in his pocket, bends down, puts on his shoe, and ties the laces. He wanders off. Ben slams the paper down on the bed and glares after him. He picks up the paper and lies on his back reading. Silence, another silence. A lavatory chain is pulled twice off stage, but the lavatory does not flush. Silence. Gus re-enters and halts at the door, scratching his head. Ben slams down the newspaper. So it goes on, and the two characters are full of dialogue, not really saying a great deal, confusing everybody, which is just wonderful. And it's left up to you to work out what's going on. And then underlying all that is the menace. Menacing. Okay. So the play is called The Dumb Waiter for a good reason. There is a loud clatter and racket in the bulge of wall between the beds of something descending. They grab their revolvers. They've got guns. Jump up and face the wall. The noise comes to a stop. Silence. They look at each other. Ben gestures sharply towards the wall. Gus approaches the wall slowly. He bangs it with his revolver. It's hollow. Ben moves to the head of his bed, his revolver cocked. Gus puts his revolver on the bed and pats along the bottom of the centre panel. He finds a rim. He lifts the panel. Disclosed is a serving hatch, a dumb waiter. A wide box is held by pulleys. Gus peers into the box. He brings out a piece of paper. Ben says, "What is it?" Gus says, "You have a look at it." Ben says, "Read it." 2 braised steak and chips, 2 sago puddings, 2 teas without sugar. Let me see that. He takes the paper. 2 teas without sugar. What do you think of that? Well, the box goes up. Ben levels his revolver. Gus says, "Well, give us a chance. They're in a hurry, aren't they?" Ben rereads the note. Gus looks over his shoulder. That's a bit funny, isn't it?" Ben says, "No, it's not funny. Probably used to be a cafe here, that's all. Upstairs. These places change hands very quickly." "A cafe?" "Yeah. What? You mean this was the kitchen down here?" "Yeah. They change hands overnight, these places, go into liquidation. The people who run it, you know, they don't find it a going concern, they move out." Gus says, "You mean the people who ran this place didn't find it a going concern and moved out?" "Sure. Well, who's got it now?" Silence. Ben says, "What do you mean, who's got it now?" Gus says, "Who's got it now? If they moved out, who moved in?" "Well, that depends. The box descends with a clatter and bang. Ben levels his revolver. Gus goes to the box and brings out a piece of paper. Gus reads, "Soup of the day, liver and onions, jam tart." A pause. Gus looks at Ben. Ben takes the note and reads it. He walks slowly to the hatch. Gus follows. Ben looks into the hatch, but not up it. Gus puts his hand on Ben's shoulder. Ben throws it off. Gus puts his finger to his mouth. He leans on the hatch and swiftly looks up it. Ben flings him away in alarm. Ben looks at the note. He throws his revolver on the bed and speaks with decision. "We better send something up." Gus says, "Eh?" Ben says, "We better send something up." "Oh, yeah. Yeah, maybe you're right." Ben, quick, what have you got in that bag? Not much. Oh, wait a minute. Gus goes to the hatch and shouts up it. Ben says, don't do that. Gus examines the contents of the bag and brings them out one by one. Gus says, biscuits, a bar of chocolate, half a pint of milk. That all? Oh, packet of tea. Ah, good. Well, we can't send the tea. That's all the tea we've got. Well, there's no gas. You can't do anything with it, can you? Maybe they can send us down a bob. That's in old parlance, that's a shilling, which they used to use to put in the gas meter to turn on the gas to get the gas. Ben says, what else is there? Gus says, oh, 1 Eccles cake. Ben says, 1 Eccles cake? Yeah. You never told me you had an Eccles cake. Oh, didn't I? Why only 1? Didn't you bring 1 for me? Oh, I didn't think you'd be keen. Well, you can't send up 1 Eccles cake anyway. And so it goes on. So what do you think, Alan? Would you...
Oh, pretty intriguing, really. I'd say he's a damn good playwright, isn't he?
I think he's fabulous.
Yes.
I think the comment that I've heard is it's very, very English. I mean, I read it and I can...
Right.
I guess it resonates with me probably because of the English accent.
Well, that's right. And, I mean, you've been an actor for an awful long time. You've taken a hang of a lot of different roles, so you appreciate the context there.
I've also heard that he's an actor's playwright too.
Ah.
Yeah, and he was an actor.
I see, right.
Yeah.
So you can see it from both sides.
Yeah, he studied at RADA, Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, along with all the greats. They all went to RADA, but I think he left after a year or so. But he did a lot of acting work, and as you say, with his acting knowledge, he uses that to write the plays.
And especially since he's taken out the that award, you said, Nobel Prize. Well, crikey. They don't hand those out with the packet of biscuits.
No, I haven't got one yet. So.
Not I.
No, that's right. So they've obviously got it wrong there, but that's okay.
Yes, right.
No, so the guy is quite a genius. I think he's a genius. Yes. But unfortunately, you don't see his stuff performed very often.
Right. I wonder why.
Yeah, and certainly not in New Zealand anyway. No. And I'm wondering whether that is because, as I say, he's very English.
Yes.
And maybe it only resonates if you're British.
Well, we've got our English playwright up in Auckland, haven't we? Now he moved up from Dunedin.
Greg
McGee?
The
TV series.
Greg McGee?
No. Oh God.
Oh. Yes. I know the name and I can't remember it.
Well. Anyway.
Okay.
You know, I would have thought there's sufficient directors in this country that could have put on 1 or 2 of his plays.
Yeah, people are very reluctant because it's hard to understand, and it's certainly not handed to you on a plate. No. You have to work at it. But
right.
Yeah. But anyway, I don't want to hog all your time, Alan, because you've got something as diverse as it could possibly be.
Well, that's true.
So let me hand across to you now.
Yes. Well, Jeff Dorking was chairman of Forest and Bird for a good many years in the Wairarapa year. Said he discovered this book a little while ago, and he's absolutely amazed with it, and put me onto it. So I've read it too, and it's hooked me just the same. It's a book called Wairarapa Moana. So it's very local about Lake Wairarapa, and there's a whole pile of Wairarapa residents who've made contributions to it, experts in their own field.
Right.
And it's decompartmentalized in that it's got everything from the very beginning, from Maori myths and the Maoris arriving here, right up to the first of the settlers, and the trouble of the Pākehā wanted to take over everything when they move into any country, and they set their eyes on the land around the Lake Wairarapa, which in those days must have been absolutely fabulous. Everyone that saw it was bowled over by the beautiful green lawn, like grass going down to the lake edge. And you think, well, since there was no animals grazing it, why would it be so even and so clean and lush looking? But of course, the lake used to flood on a regular basis, and so with the water level coming up, is a very, very shallow lake. So when it's in flood situation, it would cover something like an extra half a mile on the east side, when it's in flood, to when it's at low level. So it was being irrigated on a fairly regular basis every few months or so, right, and kept it fertile, and loads of bird life even then, wonderful fish, and of course the eels that Maori really relied on.
I suspect a lot of the birds have since been extincted?
Well, I have to own up to taking a few of them myself in the duck season. Right. But no, so it starts with Hama Te Waiti, Heami Te Waiti. I apologise if I'm not pronouncing it correctly. But the problem, if you like, that I found in reading many Maori accounts is that they drift from reality into myth. And so there's a lot of stories there about the Maori arriving, but you're not too sure whether they're talking now about the actual chieftains that were there, or a Kupe and the rest of the ancestors. So it starts out by saying Kupe arrived from Hawaii, which we assume was Hawaii, chasing an octopus, and he eventually killed it at Araroa, entrance to Tory Channel. So that was one of the big introductions from the Maori point of view. John Rhodes comes along then, and in true John Rhodes style, he gives you all the very basic things that have happened in the geological...
Sorry, let me just jump in there. So you're saying that the Maori myth, if you like, is that they were chasing an octopus and just sort of stumbled upon New Zealand?
Well, of course, in amongst the Maori introduction is also that Wairarapa is the eye of Maui. It's the tail end of the fish of the North Island. And so, and there's a hang of a lot there that it isn't too clear in my mind as to what is real and what is reality. If you can get my drift.
Sure.
So then on the coattails of that comes John Rhodes, who's very much reality. If you know John, he's very down to earth. And of course he's an expert in the geological happenings in the locality. He tells you how the lake has come up over the bed of the lake has come up over the years. And in fact that the exit, the water running out of the lake into the sea, used to be on the east side. Well, of course, we've only ever known it over there on west side by Lake Ferry pub. And so there's been huge geological changes there. And he's in his documentation here, he shows photographs of the land having risen up 20 and 30 feet or more, but over a period of 40,000 and 100,000 years, with the earthquakes happening on a fairly regular basis. And he's got a graph here over 7,000 years showing you just what's happened with regular earthquakes that New Zealand gets. Then we'll move on to another section here that is the archaeology of Wairarapa Maori by Christine Burnett, and there was a small section. It covers valuable information about where the Maori settled around the lake and what parts were important to them, and of course the outlet was vitally important. And later on came the big, well, it didn't exactly come to fisticuffs, but the big disagreement between the early settlers and Maori, because when the lake flooded, as it did every springtime and at a couple of other times through the year, it built up the bar and the water couldn't get out. It didn't get out to sea. So now, with the lake rising, it covered thousands of acres over the land, inundated, which was no good for farmers, of course. They couldn't graze their stock or work the fields up now that it was coming under water. So they wanted it open, but the Maori wanted it closed because at that time was when the eels came down to the spit there to slither over the spit at night and into the sea and head up to, I think it's Tonga, to migrate to Tonga to breed.
Yeah.
And so this was a huge festival for the Maori. So they all gathered down at the river mouth and along there, and I believe they dug channels into the spit to encourage eels to go into these channels, thinking they were going to the sea, and then they would trap them up the back, and it would be easy pickings to take the eels out of the trenches.
So the lake was their main source of food?
Yes, yes, it was. And there's another part that she talks about in this small section, and shows a photograph of a few of the Maori canoes that were left about the place near the lake. Right. There's a photo of Tom Scott photographing a dugout canoe. Tom's from Martinborough. Well, I remember going down to the lake myself around Boggy Pond and really didn't think of it as being so important at the time, but tucked away in under the trees there was a Maori dugout canoe then, and it was there for years.
When was this?
Down near Boggy Pond.
When?
Oh, when? Oh, well, this would be, I've been here 36 years, probably about 32 years ago.
Okay.
And I saw it progressively each duck shooting season when I went down to Boggy Pond. Look over in amongst these trees in the grass, here was this dugout canoe. But it's been gone in recent years, so I don't know who got down on it or where it's wound up.
Yeah.
But yes, so that, you know, that was an indication of the Maoris having been there and used these dugout canoes to fish from.
Yeah. When was that written, Alan?
This was written very recently in, I should have said too, that the editor was Ian Grant, and he's done such a good job.
Right.
It was published in 2012.
It must have taken him years to pull that together.
Yes, yes. I mean, it hasn't been out all that long, really, 8 years. But it's a fabulous book. And, well, once I got into it, I couldn't seem to put it down.
Yeah.
And as I said to you, it reminds me of many places around the lake that I know of. And when it came to early settlers, you see, it talks here about George Foster was the eldest son of a German naturalist. Johann Foster, serving as his draftsman on James Cook's first voyage, was on his second voyage into the Pacific. He arrived at Lake Ferry or Lake Wairarapa, and was taking photographs and painted some of the scenery around there. So that was the start of Gareth Winter's section, which is actually
James Cook.
Yes, James Cook.
Oh.
Yes,
he actually landed at.
Yes, he came here by accident, really, because he had his base over in the Sounds at Cook's Cove, it's called now. Right. And while they were heading over there, probably in a storm, he blew over into Palliser. And once he was there, all the Maoris saw this gigantic ship. Must have been quite a sight for them.
Yeah.
And they paddled out in their canoes to meet it. And that was his first encounter with Maori in North Island, or tail end of the North Island. And they were keen to trade with him. So they took out fish, crayfish and all this sort of thing. And he was giving them sackcloth and ropes and various things that were useful to Maori.
Tools and things, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Fabulous. Okay.
So it says the early Pakeha explorers of the Wairarapa Moana area included Samuel Breese. His watercolour shows the Western Lake site where he set up a bivouac camp in February 1843. So, you know, it was really early on. And then there are beautiful photographs, paintings, well, summer photographs, right through this book of the sections of the areas that we know today that are so different. I mean, there's a photograph there, a very early photograph, of Lake Ferry. Well, it's nothing like the Lake Ferry we know, of course, today, but that's how early it was settled in 1851.
That's the Lake Ferry Hotel.
Lake Ferry Hotel, yes. So there has been a hotel on the shores of Lake Onoki. Onoki is the last one before it goes out to sea. Since 1851. The first being built to augment the ferryman and the Miega income. By 1895, when Robert and Mary Ann Barton were leasing the hotel, a large board at its side listed the various charges for moving stock across the outlet. Well, that board is now down in the council offices at Martinborough, the actual board, and it's about 6 or 8 foot high, 4 foot wide, one piece of wood. So you can imagine the side of the log they cut it out of. And inscribed or carved into it is the price that they charged to take any stock across that little stretch of water. From memory, it was something like 6pence for a horse, 4pence for a sheep, and so on and so on. You know, it's fascinating. And so they've got a copy of it now at the restaurant in the Lake Ferry Hotel.
So that's right. I have seen that.
Anyone going to the Lake Ferry Hotel can see that.
Yeah, yes. Real history. That's fabulous.
Fabulous. And
how long would it take to pull something like that together? I mean, the research and the at the back is a list of all the contributors and a photograph of each. And I must say, I didn't. Well, I'm being a bit degrading here, but I hadn't realised that there was such expertise in the Wairarapa. Yeah.
Gareth Winter, of course, writes a huge section, and apparently he's written up to 9 books. So he's a very, very versatile.
He knows a lot.
Yeah.
Very knowledgeable chap.
That's right. And here he mentions Charles and Elizabeth Matthews were living in Wellington when they first took up leasehold land at Wairongamai. Well, Wairongamai, for my money, is the most beautiful farm in New Zealand.
Yeah.
It's a big, big station on the Western Lake Road. And the nice thing about Charles Matthews was that he even then was an environmentalist, whereas, by what I can gather, the history of the Wairarapa, years ago when the first settlers were coming to clear all this bush, and it was a big problem, they lit a match and started a fire, and apparently it burned for 5 years.
Oh my God!
It burned from here right up to the Manawatu Gorge and farther, I think. So over that they had absolutely no control until it stopped burning. But Charles Matthews undertook to clear his land, and he didn't clear it all. He cleared the lowland and just where it's graduating up into the bush, and he made sure that he retained the bush for the shelter of his animals. And in fact, he was planting even then. He planted trees even at that early stage.
Right.
And one of his favourite trees was the karaka. And I said to you before the programme, the thing that touched me is that I know so many of these places. When Sheila and I were driving down the road there, about 2 years ago, we found some karakas on the tree, and I planted them, and they've all grown.
Great.
Yes.
It's food for the pigeon, isn't it? The keruru.
Yes, they're about the only bird that can eat them.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Sorry, Alan, I'm going to have to. This is fascinating stuff, but time's not our friend at the moment.
On a bit.
No, fabulous. And name the book again.
It's Wairarapa Moana.
Wairarapa Moana, and that's by...
It's it's the contribution of everyone in the Wairarapa, really,
right.
that are knowledgeable about it.
Right.
So it's all in sections.
Fabulous.
Yes.
Thank you, Alan. We're going to have to go, matey. So I'm sorry, but that's all from Bookworms today. Broadcast live every Tuesday at 3 p.m. on Arrow 92.7 FM, your Wairarapa Community Access radio station, and Wairarapa TV on Freeview Channel 41. I'm Steve Lilliston.
I'm
This is
Alan
my host,
Wild.
Alan Wild. Thank you, Alan. That was a lot of fun, mate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you for tuning in, and we hope you enjoyed the show. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.